half shares, and tell Pharaoh, like, oh, let my people go. The second half of the line, does anybody know it? Oh, Esther, Bible scholar or something over here, says, so that they can worship me. So he says, let my people go so that they can worship me. Especially in our country, and especially in this season as we head towards July 4th, we have a lot of, baggage is weird because it has like a negative connotation, whatever the positive connotative word with baggage is, around the word freedom. When we think about the word freedom, we assume because of our cultural context that it has to do with like me getting to do whatever I want and being able to live on like my terms and me being the boss of me. Like that's what freedom is. What's interesting in that context in Exodus, when he says like, let my people go, the Israelites who, through God fulfilling his promise to Abraham, helping them thrive and prosper, now suddenly become a threat to Egypt, so then they're oppressed and enslaved. So when he's saying like, let my people go, we think, oh, freedom from slavery. But we always omit that last part, so that they can worship me. So it's less of a freedom from and more of a freedom to. Like, hey, I need, like, you have to let them free of that so that they can get over here to do this. But a lot of times when we think of worship or adoration of God or anything like that, we actually think of that as like shackles. Like, oh, I have to go do this thing, I have to like obey it, I have to do this. But in that Exodus 8:20 verse, what we see is actually, no, they're freed from this physical condition to be able to worship how God wants them to. So that's kind of the crux of the series, is really looking at what freedom means. The other thing that we kind of get caught up in our, I guess like Western triumphantalistic like reading of Scripture, is it's really common for us to look at that book of Exodus and try to draw straight lines or look at it as a template metaphor for our lives. So it's like, oh, the people of Israel, literally enslaved by the Egyptians. And I'm like, we're the people of Israel. I'm the person of Israel in my life, and I'm being enslaved by this situation. And it's like, that's actually not like, that's not the intent of the book. It's like a narrative history of something, and while there are lessons there, it's not meant to be like this like one-for-one like straight line. And one of the biggest fallacies we make, which actually causes problems in our kind of context, is this reading of like America or us as like the new Israel, and like we need to be like free to be able to like do X, Y, Z. If anything, like contextually, if you look at nations, like America would probably be the new Rome or Egypt or Babylon or Assyria in that context. And so like reading the book through that context helps us place it in its proper like positioning genre-wise, and helps us glean from it what we should be gleaning as followers of God, without getting like caught up in that kind of triumphantalistic and freedom-focused like reading of Exodus. And so that's what we're trying to do over the summer, is properly look at the context of the story. The good thing about the story, and as it pertains to us like creatively, is it creates a lot of opportunity for us to explore this idea of conflict in storytelling. Because in the book of Exodus, which is a narrative book, who had the one with the fill in the Dominic? I think you had the fill in the blanks one, right? You want to read that again?
Sure. Once upon a time, there was blank. Every day, blank. One day, blank. Because of that, blank. Because of that, blank. Until finally, blank.
Yeah, so you see in that method of storytelling, if you think of like the life of Moses, like that's a great template to hold his life, because basically what you see with Moses is somebody want to give a quick recap of Moses' life? Up until
in a Jewish family, and
yes,
his mom sent him down the river in a basket, and not just a river, the Nile River, and Moses' daughter, I believe, found him in his little basket.
Pharaoh's
What?
daughter.
Pharaoh's daughter.
Pharaoh's
Yeah,
daughter.
yeah, yeah.
No, I'm joking.
He's
Pharaoh's daughter found
He time traveled.
80,000. Yeah, and she picks him up and thinks he's cute and wants to take him in as her own. And she raises him in the house of Pharaoh, and he ends up becoming what, second to Ramses, his stepbrother, half brother, well, adopted brother. And let's see, he grows up, he ends up killing a guard who is whipping a Jew who's forced to work for Pharaoh. And he ends up running away to the desert where he runs into Nefertiti, no, what was it? Some guy falls in love with his daughter, they dance
Sephora.
around through heaven's eyes. And
Sephora?
Sephora. Yeah.
I've seen, Sephora, yeah. I've seen Prince of Egypt.
I didn't know there was makeup in Egypt.
So what you see in the story is like, so a couple different things happen. You see, before Moses is born, the Israelites like thriving in Egypt. So there you have that sort of like, once upon a time, this, every day this, every day this. But then all of a sudden, the power changes. New Pharaoh comes to power. He feels threatened by how numerous the Israelites have become, and feels like, hey, like, if we don't kind of like clamp down on these people, they have the numbers that they could overpower us. And so we need to exterminate their male babies, basically cultural genocide, so that we can maintain power over them.